First of all, Estonian, if you go back years and go back in the entrepreneurship years, then Estonian school system is built up strongly on STEM. And STEM is not just about the tech and math and science, but it's about thinking, logical thinking. It's about solving problems. And our all the math, technology, physics, chemistry is oversubscribed subjects in all of Estonian universities. Secondly, we also have we had two first unicorns in Estonia, Skype and Playtech. And those two companies that employed Estonian tech people and Estonian people, they introduced the next generation of the entrepreneurs how to build and run a global tech company. So we even have a map which is called Skype Mafia, how Skype employees founded another set of companies. And for example, one of the most famous one is Wise or TransferWise, because the founder of Wise was the first employee of Skype in Estonia. And now we already have the employees of Wise setting up their own companies. Those two I mentioned previously, Grünfin and Lightyear, both of the founding teams of the companies are from Wise. And obviously the very strong support from the government.
Kaidi, thank you so much for taking time to speak to us today. Please, before we start, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Pleasure to be here and pleasure to talk to you. My name is Kaidi Ruusalepp, as you introduced, and I'm Estonian. So I'm one of those founders from, as we call it, the Startup Nation, Estonia. I'm the founder and CEO of Funderbeam. Funderbeam is the marketplace for private companies to raise the funds and investors to invest with the liquidity or with the secondaries. And besides that, I also this year hold a position which is pretty significant in Estonian startup sector. I'm the president of Estonian Startup Founders Society. It's this voluntary position one of the founder takes for a year to represent the Estonian startups in the Estonian startup ecosystem. And I also advise the President of Estonia, Mr. Alar Karis, on the digital and tech matters, together with two other digital experts here in Estonia.
Wow, congratulations. That sounds like a really influential role.
Yes, yes, I wouldn't underestimate it, but that's something that is beautiful here in Estonia. We have 1.3 million people, is that we all have to somehow step up and contribute to the country, contribute to develop the country, to make the country the best place. As here in the startup sector, we would like to be the best startup ecosystem in the world to found companies, fund companies, and scale companies. So besides an honor, it's also everything what we as startup founders can do and want to do for the country.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I guess that sense of ownership can already start telling us a little bit about what is it that makes Estonia such a powerhouse for startups, which we'll be talking about later on. But let's, before we get to that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey? What was it that led you to start Funderbeam?
My entrepreneurship story is pretty interesting because I didn't study economy at all, and I didn't work in this field in my previous life. In fact, I studied law. I was the first IT lawyer in Estonia working for the government back in late 1990s. And then I joined the stock exchange group, Estonian Stock Exchange group. First, I took care of all the post-trade transactions. We call it the Estonian Central Securities Depository. And I was the CEO of it. And later, I became the CEO of Tallinn Stock Exchange. So we were part of first Helsinki Stock Exchange and then OMX Group and later the NASDAQ. So in a way, I'm like the second generation of entrepreneur, first having my corporate and public service career, and then became an entrepreneur. But the Funderbeam, the marketplace, and the idea of it started actually from NASDAQ years, because I saw the power of tech, the technology being global, the technology being able to eliminate some of the intermediaries in this business. I saw a lot of capital going straight into private companies and into tech companies, including 100 million plus mega rounds without stock exchange being there. And also stock exchanges transforming into the exit engine instead of also access to capital. So that's made the beginning of the company called Funderbeam.
Okay, and Kaidi, just for those who may not know much about funding models, could you explain to us what is equity funding and how is that different from debt funding or crowdfunding or angel funding, all the different funding models that we hear about?
Right. There's several layers in the equity funding. First of all, investors who invest in equity funding rounds. So in return for the investment, they get the shares of the company. That's different from some of the crowdfunding models where crowdfunders or backers are just the donators. So in return of investing or not investing, but donating the funds to the company, they get either the first prototype of the product, or sometimes it's even releasing a LP if we talk about the music. So equity in return, you get shares. When we talk about the debt and debt financing, then investors are creditors of the company. There's normally yearly interest, and in return you get the payment back or investment back, plus on top of it the interest paid out. So that's the main difference. But when we talk about the broader sense, like equity investing versus the angel investing, then in our case the equity fundraise is from the broader investor group than just the angel investors, including retail investors, including sophisticated stock market investors, those who would like to invest in startup and tech companies and help them with their experience from the investment side.
Right. And what would you say are the main challenges that companies face today in raising capital, or that potential investors face today in knowing where to put their money?
Right now, it's the first obstacle. Obviously, is the overall volatility in all the investments, starting from the main capital markets and public markets, and going down to the startup investments as well. So there's certain nervousness maybe in the investment side, and that's the global It's about the valuations of the company. It's about the sizes of the rounds companies now raise. So both the companies and investors take this year a bit more cautiously and look what the global economy is going to do. That's maybe the first thing. And the second, I don't think anything much has changed in early stage investment. It's the business model, it's the problem, it's the team, it's the previous traction. Maybe the only addition to what's changed is what industries are going to be the growing industries.
Right. Okay, and I would like to know a little bit more about Funderbeam. Please tell us what does it do, what's its key value proposition, and specifically how is it disrupting equity funding?
Okay. Funderbeam is the global funding and trading marketplace for private companies. So what we do, we enable investors from several parts of the world to invest in tech companies, again, across the world. And when investors invest, in return, they get the equity or the shares of the company. What we do, we pool the funds behind the syndicate so that startup doesn't have all those hundreds of investors in the cap table, but they are behind the Funderbeam. We call it the custody or nominee. And that enables a company to raise funds from their clients, partners, network, community, from the broader investor base, keep the cap table clean, but use this type of fundraising also as the marketing and spreading the word and engaging. Later we can talk a bit more about this network engaging and community engaging, because this wider equity funding, some even call it a crowdfunding, is a powerful tool to incentivize companies, customers and network around them. But what makes Funderbeam different is our secondary market. So these investments, which are invested through Funderbeam marketplace, at one point become tradable. So when investors invest, they can sell their investments or they can exit their investments. But we also help companies to do only the secondaries on our marketplace. So let's imagine there's the company which is 6+ years old. They have employees who have shares, the founders, early investors. There are a couple of hundreds people who might get the use of the liquidity, so we can help them with the secondaries. They can even create their own private trading pool in Funderbeam, only for the company shareholders, but that helps CFOs and CEOs to show not only to the shareholders, but most importantly to the employees, that actually they can sell the shares when they need it in the company controlled environment. And maybe one thing in Funderbeam case, which is now scaling and very interesting product, and we just signed a partnership with Danish Business Angels Network and the Estonian Business Angels Network, is this private fundraising. And private fundraising means that this is a automated flow of syndication on our marketplace, on our technology. So in Thunderbeam case, they have members. The members sign up for Funderbeam. The deal flow is visible only for the members. They can indicate their investment in the Thunderbeam curated deals, and we help to close it. These are the private angel network deals, and that's quite interesting because we don't see much of competition in this field.
Well, okay, so if I understand this correctly, then Funderbeam not only creates the pooling of resources, but you've also created a secondary market
Yes.
that enables people
Yes.
to transact there.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, we do. And that's something what makes us different from any funding platforms, any other crowdfunding platforms, and even from the angel networks and VCs.
Indeed. Okay, and I think we lately hear a lot about the democratization of wealth management services. In your view, what is driving this trend?
The private investors, when you aggregate the private investors and the wealth that private investors hold, then it forms into quite substantial number. So people, like you also ask, or you mentioned the power of crowds, or the power of many, right? So that's one thing. The second is that investors maybe are becoming more educated because they have access to online investment tools like Robinhood and eToro and many others. So they get familiar with the online investments and also investing in tech and private companies. Secondly, in case there's the marketplaces like Funderbeam, which enables these private investors to easily pick the companies and also the companies to pick the private investors, then it's also the facilitator. But the main aspect is the interest, is connected world, and is the tech and solutions between the company and the investors.
Okay, and I think there's perhaps a large majority of people that, you know, they have some savings, but they've never really invested before, perhaps because it's been always perhaps a bit prohibitive to enter the investment market, or because it's just too complex for them. So how can this group of people benefit from this new trend and from tools and platforms like Funderbeam?
First, people have to ask from their own investor that lives inside them, what type of risk am I able to carry? Because when we talk about the startup companies, then there's this kind of a rule that 9 companies out of 10 cease to exist in a couple of years' time. So can I handle it? And can my risk appetite handle it? The second is the question, do I understand those early stage investments and early stage companies? Because there might be no substantial revenue. The founders are the first time entrepreneurs, and there may also be pivots during the years of existence because the first and initial model didn't work. So the company needs to change it. So these questions first investor has to ask himself or herself. And if it's the first couple of investments are just, I want to learn, then it's okay to start. But when investor does not want to invest those first tickets just to learn and understand the startup investments, then maybe to invest into the later stage companies or already in the public companies. But definitely this is an enabler to those investors who are willing to take risk, who understand the risk, and who also understands the consequences of investing in startup companies.
Right, I see. Now, I guess operating a company like Funderbeam gives you access to a lot of the innovation that's happening in the marketplace, and you must have a really good grasp on the types of innovation. And my question therefore is there anything exciting that you see that's popping up in fintech that we might perhaps see becoming more mainstream in the next few years?
Yes, in fintech, obviously there's many solutions for retail investors. That's something that is visible and that is visible to people. In Estonia, there's, for example, two super cool fintech companies, Grünfin and Lightyear. One is Lightyear is if I compare the European competitor to Robinhood, and Grünfin enables investors to invest in sustainable companies, first through the index and the index funds, but then expanding it to other asset classes as well. But two things I would keep an eye on in the fintech space. If I were an investor, then the first is all kind of decentralized finance solutions. It's very early years, very early years. Everything that is built on the blockchain, and I don't mean crypto and crypto only, because the decentralized and Web3 is now facing the second coming. The ICOs and tokens, what we've seen massively scaling in 2017, that was like the first coming. So keep an eye on Web3 and also keep an eye on this new public blockchain called Algorand, because they have the applications, a lot of applications built on it. So it's like a community or the network. And the second, which is not very visible, but which is also the scaling, is all the software as a service solutions or the back office solutions to financial sector. And it's again good margin, very good profit business, but who of investors, if you think about the private or the retail investors, would like to invest in some kind of banking back office system? It's not that sexy, right? But it's scaling and it's interesting area. I guess again, when you think about the banking and the banking industry, their tech is 30 plus, in some cases 40 plus years old, with massive legacy. And if your startup can disrupt it, or any startup can in a way disrupt it and help the banks, that's the customer base.
Wow, really fascinating stuff. Okay, I would like us to switch gears a little bit now and talk about Estonia, because we've been surprised by the amount of unicorns that are being produced by this small Baltic country. I was reading a report by Unicorn 59 that says that Estonia has the largest unicorns per capita in the world. It's something like 1 per 130,000 people, which is amazing. So my question to you is, what's in the water?
Yeah, there's this special, this chemical elements in the Estonian water that makes people to found startup companies. Leaving the joke aside, first of all, Estonian, if you go back years and go back in the entrepreneurship years, then Estonian school system is built up strongly on STEM. And STEM is not just about the tech and math and science, but it's about thinking, logical thinking. It's about solving problems. And our all the math, technology, physics, chemistry is oversubscribed subjects in all of Estonian universities. Secondly, we also have we had two first unicorns in Estonia, Skype and Playtech. And those two companies that employed Estonian tech people and Estonian people, they introduced the next generation of the entrepreneurs how to build and run a global tech company. So we even have a map which is called Skype Mafia, how Skype employees founded another set of companies. And for example, one of the most famous one is Wise or TransferWise, because the founder of Wise was the first employee of Skype in Estonia.
So this mafia.
Yes. So and that's how it goes. And now we already have the employees of Wise setting up their own companies. Those two I mentioned previously, Grunfin and Lightyear, both of the founding teams of the companies are from Wise, and obviously the very strong support from the government.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's really remarkable and also really quite interesting to see how these networks have been just going to continue to produce cells of innovation, new companies.
Exactly, this is the typical network effects, is that it starts to contribute and contribute and contribute. So it's like a snowball. And now that we have 10 unicorns in Estonia, you can imagine how many new founders those global tech unicorns born out of Estonia can introduce in 3 years' time. So not only the Estonian startup companies scale exponentially, but also the tech ecosystem scales exponentially.
That's remarkable. And I guess this also goes back to what you were mentioning at the beginning, that because you're a small nation, everyone feels that they have to step up and own the development of their own country, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely sure. And I don't know any other countries which holds Founders Society, but Estonia does. So all the top tech founders, we have close to 200 people belonging to the Founders Society. It's again the voluntary association where we help each other, where we help the fellow founders. We share experiences. We invite the other tech founders over to introduce not only our company, but when Estonia introduces a new unicorn, then the other founders can go and visit and hear the story, and really from the main source, from the founder, and also working with the government. So any other countries founders who listen to it, Estonia has benefited a lot from establishing a Founders Society.
That's amazing. That's really something to model for the rest of the world. Exactly, to copy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So then let me ask you: with the ease of access to funding capital provided by innovation and democratization, and with these network effects that we're seeing, do you expect to see more and more people going down the entrepreneurial route than perhaps there's been in the past?
Yes, I see. I don't even need to predict the future. If we look at the number of startups founded and funded, that's a fact. So two reports that are available for free to everybody who are interested. The first is CB Insight Q1 2022 report that goes back to the history. And also if you Google global startup funding and Crunchbase. So these indicate that not only the funding that goes into the startup companies, but also the startups founded is in the growth mode. It's easy to, it's the price of setting up the company that's close to nothing nowadays, whereas it used to be $50,000 plus close to 20 years ago. So you can guess, and plus the services that are now easy to sell across the borders, capital that is accessible. So it doesn't matter if I'm Estonian founder or founder from the Chile or Japan. We have access to capital to grow our company. But maybe the third has nothing to do with this kind of access to capital or entrepreneurship journey, it's actually about the willingness for the people to be in charge of their own employment life. So very often the companies are not set to build a unicorn. You just do it because you want to be employed by yourself. But all of a sudden, the business or the company starts to scale.
I think it's just to think about how different the world might look like in 20 years when this avalanche of innovation and entrepreneurial spirit just completely starts taking over. I mean, I'm thinking not just business, but also education, right? That the education system at the moment is built on creating workers for industry. If we now start creating entrepreneurs for society, I think we could see a massive transformation in the way that we run our societies in free democratic countries, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a very interesting topic, actually, which Web3 is tackling, because all these decentralized autonomous organizations, these are not only one by one private entities, but also some of the communities or the even countries at one point may go through this nuance and disruptive models. I know very many people argue against it. If there's a state, there's the government and the parliament, right? But who knows? When there's the tech and there's the will, there's the road.
Absolutely. Well, Kaidi, I think that's a perfect place to end our conversation today. Thank you so much for spending time with us. This is just really exciting listening to you and especially listening to what Estonia has to offer to the rest of Europe and the world. And we've, of course, will be keeping a very, very close eye on what Estonia does and what Funderbeam does next. And of course, we are excited and we're looking forward to having you at Nordic Fintech Week later in September this year.
Couldn't wait. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Kaidi.
Thanks.